the question is this: since I'm coming from Java Spring background, I'm used to very opinionated frameworks. I'm personally struggling with how to structure my React projects. Most researchers dive into using Tailwind and stuff, which I want to postpone until I've learned all the basics. Well, I mean, your question is a little bit confusing, right? Because I wouldn't necessarily say that Tailwind has anything to do with the structure of the project itself, right? So, of course, if you don't know CSS, then you should certainly learn CSS first before you use any utilities, right? Tailwind is a CSS utility library, right? And even if you use it, you still need some CSS knowledge, right? Because you still need to know what border radius is, what a letter spacing is, what a flex is, what a grid is, right? So Tailwind is not going to relieve you of these things anyway, right? Yeah, exactly, right. But either way, right, some of these tools can help you, right? But the CSS is the most fundamental skill of web development, right? No matter what you hear on the internet, if you don't know CSS, you are pretty much useless, right? Because you can write perfect code. If you build products that look like shit, then it's pointless, right? I mean, imagine you go to a car shop and they tell you, look, you see this box that you're looking at, that's actually a Ferrari in the inside. It's just the shell is from Volkswagen too, right? And you're like, yeah, but I mean, I want the Ferrari to look rad and like look cool. Yeah, no, it is a Ferrari. The engine is Ferrari's, but you know the rest of the car, it's Volkswagen, right? And you're like, what? So right, so it's the same with the CSS, for example, right? So when it comes to structuring React projects, right, I wouldn't worry if you're learning that right now, right? I think, again, as I always say, let your reason take you to these places of structure, right? So for example, if you're just learning React.js, just put everything in a single folder. Who cares, right? And then use reason, right? Because you said you're a Java developer. I'm sure that you've been using folders and various other organizational patterns to organize your code, right? So instead of holding you back from learning, from making progress and boring yourself with all of these details, right? I would just say build things, right? I mean, heck, put 30 different components in a single file and then compose some view, right? You want to focus on learning the APIs of the language, of the library, right? Of how it works. And then you can always take these little chunks of code and put them in a different place, right? So don't worry too much about this perfection up front, right? Because you have to choose what it is that you're learning, right? And I would say, find some website and try to mimic that website by using any of these tools. If you're trying to learn React, then, and of course, minimize the amount of things. And this what I'm saying applies to learning anything, really. If you want to learn Go, don't add a database or instantly. Don't add caching mechanism like Redis. I want to learn Go, and then you start learning Kubernetes. Like, no, man, just learn Go. Hard code your database, right? Hard code some array of objects, whatever, right? So it's very easy to fall into trap when trying to learn new things. Then you allow this scope creep to jump in as you're learning things, right? Just focus on one tiny thing and build with that, right? Otherwise, you will never learn. This ecosystem is so huge, right? I mean, past 1 hour, people have, mentioned 10 different state machines only, right? So it's impossible to do that, right? So in simple words, if you want to learn React, focus on writing components, passing props, and just focus on that, right? Let me tell you what I mean. Look, let me tell you what I mean. Start writing React components, right? Create some sort of a view, right? Create a view like this. And I'm just gonna illustrate something. Draw something by hand. Say, I wanna build a view like this that has these boxes, right? And then I want something like this, right? Actually, you don't see my screen. Let me just share my screen, sorry. So start something like this, right? And then put, if you want, everything in a single file, right? All of these components in a single file, right? Then compose these components, put another component in here, right? And then put another component inside of that component, right? And then you will realize certain things. You will realize that you need data in a certain place, in a certain way, right? Then you're gonna end up having some state here in your container component, right? And then you will realize that you need this state inside of this component, right? Then you're gonna pass this state to here. This component is gonna pass it to this component. And then this component is gonna pass into this component. Then you're gonna realize over time, it's like, shit, man, I'm passing this object 5 levels down, right? I mean, there's literally like level 1, then there's 5 of them, man. So I'm passing this state, I'm doing this prop drilling, as it's called, right? And then your instincts are naturally gonna start kicking in. You're gonna start asking rational questions. It's like, man, there has to be a better way for me to pass this data from top to bottom. And maybe this data really has to be here, right? So maybe it has to be here. Then you're gonna start asking questions, man, it has to be a better way to get my data from here to here, right? You see where I'm going with this. You cannot learn everything at once. It's impossible. You have to start simple. You have to build a simple thing and fall into these traps. And this is where you instantly learn. This is where things instantly stick in your mind because you had this issue. You cannot start learning about, let's say, prop drilling without ever getting into this issue. That is the problem with people who learn all of these APIs randomly. You wake up one day and you say, let me learn context API. You just woke up, right? You saw some YouTube video. You're like, yeah, let me learn context. Why? There's no difference in waking up one morning and saying, you know what? I'm going to go to Amazon and I'm going to order Jigsaw. You know what? Today I'm going to learn how to use a jigsaw. What? Why? Right? You wake up on Thursday and you're going to be like, I'm going to go and buy a hammer and use it. Right? You see where I'm going with this, right? So you need to build simple things that will lead you to the more complicated concepts. In order to learn this concept, you need to get to the point of needing that, right? You need to get yourself to the point where you're like, shit, man, I'm passing this data through 5 components. This doesn't seem right. There has to be a better way. And then you're like, there is a better way. There's the context, for example, right? There is a better way. There's a context, right? And every single underlying library in React, including React Redux, is using this context API exactly for this reason. Because your, let's say, even Redux store is defined somewhere on the most top level. You have some provider, but in here, you're like, use selector, right? Oh, wow, how can I do that? This is so cool. I don't have to pass these things to 5 levels down. You can do it because we're using the context API, right? So the point here is, as you can see, to just summarize this, is there's a lot of concepts that one can learn. Some of them you might never need, right? There are many hooks in React that you will never use in your life, right? But you will use them if you need them, because you will find them. Your problem is going to lead you there. You know, there's a bunch of these hooks in React, like use imperative, right? Like use imperative handler, right? You're going to need this once in your life, maybe, or 10 times, right? But if you need it, you will find it because you're going to start Googling. Oh, man, we need to do this. How do we do this? Oh, shit. Oh, use imperative handle. That's exactly what I need, right? Use ID. This is life-saving. This is what I need, right? But I'm sure that many of you never even seen this, right? And there's no shame in that. You never needed this utility, right? So the point is, you don't learn technology by heart. You don't wake up and say, okay, today I'm going to learn use ID. That's never going to stick in your brain. It's impossible, right? There's no point in that. So I would say this is how basically I would learn anything. And in this context, how I would learn React as well, or any other tool, right? I would start building simple things and let the issues lead me to more complex concepts as they arise. That's my take on it.